following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah!
Go Cowboys!
Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Yeah, and so much for that.
It's time for The Break on DallasCowboys.com.
We were on the break!
With Ambar Garcia, Bryan Broaddus, Nick Harris, and Derek Eagleton.
It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024, Season 20, Episode number 72. Welcome to the latest edition of The Break. We are live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star, presented by LG. LG is the world's #1 OLED TV brand for 11 years and counting. See why at LG.com/OLED Evo. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
I'm feeling great, man. I had
do
such a
it.
great night's sleep last night. I'm
Love
nice
that.
and energized here, ready to go. And let's do it. Let's talk some Cowboys football. We got a lot of injuries to go through. This might take an entire segment. We'll see how it goes. But later in the show, we're going to get into the Washington defense versus the Cowboys offense. We've got some fan questions lined up here. I got a few coming from Twitter. I've even got one coming from Blue Sky. We got a lot of questions from fans. We're going to get to that. If you haven't gotten on Blue Sky, make sure you go check it out. It's actually a pretty cool little app there. And maybe you can
take your word for it.
Some of the toxicity of Twitter. Just at least diversify a little bit. We'll move around a little bit. But we'll take some questions from both. You can hit me on either Twitter or on Blue Sky, and I'll try to get to some more questions if I can here throughout the course of the show. Let's start with the injury report. Let's start with some of the guys that are returning from injury. Deron Bland, Chuma Edoga, Brandon Cooks, Marshawn Nealon. What are we hearing about them and the possibilities of them playing this weekend, knowing Deron Bland was a full participant yesterday?
Yeah, it sounds like Deron Bland's in line to make his season debut on Sunday, which will obviously be big for Mike Zimmer's defense. It'll be the first time he gets to utilize him in a game. As far as Brandon Cooks and Marshawn Nealon go, as long as they stay on track of where they are right now, the expectation is that they could be lifted off of the IR. Now, as far as corresponding roster moves, that's where I think it might get a little bit tricky with maybe a guy like Chuma Edoga, because you look at Marquise Bell, he's expected to go on the IR with his shoulder dislocation. That's most likely going to require surgery. So you do have one spot you can use with Brandon Cooks, Marshawn Nealon, Chuma Edoga. Then you got to kind of figure out one or two more. So, but as long as they can figure out roster correspondence, then I think Brandon Cooks, Marshawn Nealon, Chuma Edoga would be ready for Sunday.
Yep. Which of those guys you think has the biggest, outside of Deron, which we know would have an immediate impact, of those other guys, who do you think could have an immediate impact, particularly thinking about Brandon Cooks and Marshawn Nealon?
Yeah, I think a case could be made for both, but if you're looking for maybe the bigger impact, I still look at a veteran like Brandon Cooks, especially with this offense, how it's been playing, or not playing, rather. I think he just kind of adds a layer that this offense desperately needs right now.
Absolutely. I think it's Cooks. I mean, and I'm so happy for Nealon coming back, because I kind of felt like that he was 1 or 2 sacks away from really kind of figuring this thing out. Then all of a sudden it was going to be 6.5 sacks. You know, his play was, he went from a guy that I really didn't think was a great pass rusher coming out of college, and then you watch him at practice and training camp, and he started working against, the Rams, the preseason games, all those things. And you were kind of encouraged that he was kind of figuring some things out. And then he gets hurt, and unfortunately. So I'm excited about him, but they need somebody. They need an offensive weapon. And, Cook's route running ability to get open, secure the ball, make plays. They desperately need a guy like that, and he surely can help.
Yeah. Talk to me about Jordan Lewis. He missed last week's game with a neck injury. He was limited yesterday. We good here?
Should be good.
All right, good. And then obviously 2 veterans. I think they are okay, but Eric Kendricks, CeeDee Lamb, both limited as well. Are those just vet days? Or are we concerned at all about those guys?
No concern as of now.
All right, good. All right, a couple guys that didn't practice at all. Hunter Lipke, Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, Jake Ferguson. I think the talk has been that Jake probably is not playing this week.
Correct. That's true.
What about those other 3?
Yeah, looking at Zach Martin, going to continue to go through the week. Mike McCarthy spoke on it yesterday, and there were some things today. Today's a big day for Zach Martin. So once we come out of today, we'll probably be more news tomorrow as far as his availability. But I think this is a little bit more serious than the usual nick and bang that Zach Martin has gotten used to over the course of the last
Did
couple
you call
of
it
years.
a nick and bang?
A nick and bang.
Never heard that, but I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, nick and bang.
Or
Okay.
nick and knack or a bing and bang. I don't know. But Zach Martin's been battling a lot with his body last couple of years, but I think this one's a little bit more serious than, the random ankle or shoulder or whatever that he typically plays through. This one, he not only had the ankle injury, but he kind of got punched in the throat in the game too. That was kind of the moment where he was on a knee, kind of shaking his head, and so I think a couple of those things might be a little bit difficult to play through on a short week.
Yeah, he's the one that they're worried about is him. Smith, they feel like can be ready to go, but the Martin one, when you ask over there about, well, hey, tell me about Martin, and like, what do you want to know? Where do you want to start? Kind of a thing. He's been battling through a lot. He really, really has. And I thought you made some points about it yesterday, talking about how he's, we kind of talk about the level of how he's played, but it's just tough with all the injuries that he's had to deal with.
Yeah, I remember a graphic. This is many years ago we put together on DeMarcus Ware before
all the things that were
the last year he was here, and it was like you had like these little target symbols that we put on all the different parts of his body that were hurt, and I want to say it was like 7 or 8 different areas where it was just like injury, and it's like these veterans, man, they get to a point their bodies are just so beat up. And they really do just need kind of a break. They just need to be able to stop. And if they stop for a little bit, some of the stuff could actually heal. But when you're going through a season, there is no stop. There is no pause button. You got to keep going through, at least how they look at it. Got to keep going through, and that's what he's doing. He's battling through, and you respect him even more for that.
Yeah, I a lot of respect for Zach Martin on how he's handling this year, because I'm sure it's tough. He talked about in OTAs about how this could be his last campaign and how his body's kind of not responding to certain things, and how it has his first 10 years, and for the season to be going the way it is and him still fighting every week and trying to get back on the field even in anticipation of 3 games in 10 days, that's not easy on anybody, much less his. A lot of credit to Zach Martin for sticking it through.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, he's not going to hurt his finger and be like, ow, I'm out. Sorry, guys, I got something going. He's a guy he's going to try to be out there no matter what. And he's shown that all through this season. So it's one of those things that sometimes maybe you need somebody else to be the one to pull you out and sit you down just for your own good. But curious to see what kind of happens with him for the rest of the season, because if he gets to a point where they're not longer mathematically, yes,
gotcha.
there in the run to the Super Bowl, then there's no point really.
Well, that's also the interesting part, because if this is his last campaign, I don't know that he wants to finish it on IR, right? So that's where you probably have to you probably should defer.
Yeah,
a
but
little
you're
bit
playing
to the
for
veteran.
what?
For the players, they're playing for 17 games. They're playing because as Bill Parcells used to say, during football season, football players play football.
But Zach, he's not like any other player. Where his career is going to lead to after he leaves and all that. So it depends where you're at physically. Because if your body's hurting, what's the point of you putting yourself through that? You have nothing else to prove.
Other than it may be the last time he puts on pads for the rest of his life. And that is something, when you're giving that up and you've done it all your life, that's something that I think can motivate you to say, I don't care that we're not playing for a championship this year. Mm-hmm. It is these are the last few times I have to suit up with the guys I call my brothers in this battle, and I want to battle.
He signed up for 17 weeks.
Yeah.
That's really how it works. And you make a really good point, though. You really do.
That's the logical point.
It is. It's very why?
Yeah.
Why do you but for him, I just remember players like we had a guy, Eddie George. Derek will remember Eddie George. I don't know if you ever remember Eddie George, running back. Okay. Eddie George.
You don't know Eddie George?
I mean, I know Eddie George. I just wasn't around for that.
Yes,
I know you weren't around, but Eddie George,
yes.
we had Eddie George here, and it was the end of his career. And he had a consecutive streak of starting for running back. It was a really impressive streak. And we got the bright idea to inactivate him one weekend.
Yeah.
And it ended his streak. For what? And that ruined him. That just ruined him because he was playing. He was such pride about playing every week in that streak. And one weekend we decided, no, we're going to activate somebody else because the head coach wanted to. We got, to prove a point. And there was no reason to. Just let the guy keep playing, and that's what these players do. They sign up, especially the really good ones.
Yeah.
The really good ones know that, like Derek says, that, hey, there's going to be a time where I'm 33 years old and I'm not going to put a uniform on anymore. That's still a young guy.
Yeah.
Reasonably, that's a young guy. So you want to have that memory. You don't want to go out like Eddie George did, where all of a sudden, people, are looking at you and you're like, oh, I can't do it anymore. But you keep playing. You keep playing, and I think that's where Zach
I guess
Martin.
only he really knows the pain
You-
that he's
you-
going through,
you owe
I
him.
would leave it up to his decision.
Exactly.
He knows
That's
best
exactly
what
right.
he
You-
can or can't do, or
You
what he
leave
wants
it
to
up.
put himself
Yeah,
through.
we should have left it up to Eddie George to keep playing, which he did. He wanted to play. We took that away from him that one day, and it wrecked his streak.
Yeah.
Where he could have gone out as, not Eddie George that finished with the Dallas Cowboys that wasn't any good at the end. It was, Eddie George, the Warrior, who played 150-something straight games at running back. That's how he should have been remembered, not by a guy that had ended his career with the Cowboys and ended the streak with the Cowboys.
Not only did Zach Martin sign up for 17 games, he signed up to be a leader for this team. I would be shocked if he does not care about the future of this team, especially as it pertains to the offensive line. Young guys like Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton. Spoke to Guyton in the locker room yesterday about how Zach Martin has been helping him through this season. So there's still a lot of value in Zach Martin being on the field, even if it might not get seen this year. He could see value in what he puts into the field this year in these 7 remaining games being remnant effects down the line whenever this team can win. So
I think the older I get to, the more I realize, because I go through it now, I'm starting to go through it in my life. You start realizing there are things that you have to give up because your body just can't do them anymore. And I think that's a hard thing to do. And I'm not a professional athlete, obviously. I haven't done this all my life. But there are things as you get older, you start realizing, man, I just can't do this anymore. And you really want to do it. Everything in you wants to do it. It's just something you have a passion for, you love, and you start realizing there is an end date on it all. Like there's an expiration date when it comes to the things that you want to be able to do, and you're going to have to walk away from some of those things at some point. And that's why it really touches me for somebody like Zach, and seeing him go through this right now, go through this season, go through these injuries, and get to the end. And I'm like, the right thing to do as an organization for a guy who has given you so much throughout his career is to let him be able to say, if I can figure out a way to gut it out and get out there, let him get gutted out and get out there.
Yeah.
All right.
Even though that it might be hurting the team.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I would actually look at it a little differently if they were playing for something, back to your point, Amber. If they were literally right now in a situation where they're battling for the division, I might be like, hey, Zach, hey, are you looking at the best of the team or what's best for you? Maybe you have to go with what's best for the team.
Right.
But the fact that that isn't the case, I think now I would even be more so like, hey, man, if this is what you want to do, if you feel like you can figure it out and you can get out there, hey, I'm going to be behind you and I'll support you.
You owe him
doing
that.
Yeah.
You do owe him
Well,
that.
yeah, and I mean, not to keep this conversation going so long, but the way I see it, again, like I said, a personal decision for him, let him make that decision. But it's one of those things that if you're out of the run, if it gets to that point, and then you're already getting beat because of the injuries that you're dealing with, that could potentially lead to something worse. You've gone through your career to this point of your career where you haven't had anything major, like really affect you in that way. And now you're out there, and who knows what kind of injury that you getting beat can lead to where now that can potentially affect the rest of your life. Because he's a dad, he has young kids and all that. So I'm saying, like, I don't know. Again, leave it up to him. We'll see. But either way, whatever the decision is, whether he plays or don't play, I'll support and be there. Go, Zach.
Right.
And wish him the best regardless.
No doubt. All right, we're going to take our first break. We'll come back. We'll dive into this Washington defense and some of the challenges there and some of the opportunities, because there are both when you look at this defense. We'll do that when we come back. This is DallasCowboys.com radio.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
It's the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black. And right now, Cowboys fans can get 15% off their $75 order. Plus, because every deal needs a playmaker, your order will include a free 5-piece skincare set and free shipping. The Jack Black Playmaker is 4 of Jack's favorites and a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Make a play for the playmaker at getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP.
Don't put off getting your oil changed, Dallas. Take 5 Oil Change, a proud partner of the Cowboys, is faster than you think. They're so fast, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can take advantage of Take 5's stay-in-your-car 10-minute oil change at any of their locations across the Dallas area. And remember, at Take 5, you stay in your car because they're faster than you think. That means you won't even have time to show off your best touchdown celebration. Take 5, the official oil change of the Dallas Cowboys.
From the field to the festivities, Lucchese embodies the essence of luxury and tradition. Handcrafted with meticulous precision, each pair offers unmatched comfort and style. Stand tall while you're tailgating or cheering in the stands with the Dallas Cowboys collection by Lucchese. Shop the collection today at the Lucchese store at the Star in Frisco or online at lucchese.com. Lucchese, the official boot of the Dallas Cowboys and Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders.
Hey y'all, Matt Pittman of Meat Church here. With football season kicking off, I'm already gearing up to bring the smoker back to AT&T Stadium for some epic tailgates. But with that Texas heat, it's crucial to keep my beer hand cramping cold. That's where Yeti's insulated Colster can cooler comes in clutch. This year, you can even get them with the iconic star engraved on the side. Licensed Yeti Cowboys gear is now available at Stadium Pro Shops, concessions, and on Yeti.com. Check it out today. Yeti, official cooler and drinkware of the Dallas Cowboys.
Back to the break.
LG OLED Evo is the best TV in the game, but don't take our word for it. Digital Trends said the LG OLED G4 has the best picture quality they've ever seen. See it for yourself at lg.com/OLED Evo.
Welcome back to the second segment of the break, live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. This segment's brought to you by blockchain.com. All right, Washington defense. Right now, they are 5th in passing defense, only giving up 184 yards per game through the air. They are also 8th right now in sacks with 29. Who are the best pass rushers and how they match up against this offensive line?
It's funny. You look at Dante Fowler, you look at Dorrance Armstrong.
We know, right?
Yeah.
Dante Fowler's had a hell of a year.
Frankie Louvu, too.
Absolutely.
People forget Fowler was a first-round pick. This dude has been a player since.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
He's a player.
I think it's more so just like in comparison to what he was in Dallas, which he was good in Dallas, but it was very situational. He didn't get many snaps.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to the forced fumble that led to Leighton Vander Esch's final touchdown in his final full game. I think it was his only touchdown in his final full game. He had his moments in Dallas, but it looked like that they were trying to maximize his athleticism by keeping him fresh throughout the entirety of games, whereas Washington throws him on the field and is like, okay, go be as athletic as you can on as many snaps as you can, and now he's on a Pro Bowl pace. So
how many sacks does he have?
This is
with 8.5.
Yeah, give me one moment
That's
on
a
that.
lot.
But
I think
he
he got
gets
8.5. I think Frankie Louvu has 7. I think is what they got.
Yeah, he gets after the quarterback, but it's the athleticism that's really maximized, and I think that's probably the concern that you look at whenever you look 8.5. Yes, whenever you look at how these tackles could defend him.
Is he better at this point? Is he playing better as a pass rusher than Armstrong?
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
I think Armstrong's your guy that can get in the backfield in the run game and is still definitely a contributor there.
Yeah.
I like this front. This front is still learning. It's still young. Outside of Armstrong and Fowler, it's still young, but I do like this front. I think there's some gaps in the middle that I think you could exploit, but overall, I think they've done a good job.
Yeah, Nick's got him absolutely right. I mean, they did have a big loss, and Jonathan Allen went out. He got hurt in the Baltimore game. He tore a pec muscle, so he's done. But Newton, the rookie from Illinois, is a nice player for him. Deron Payne, we've talked about him. He's been a pain in the for the Cowboys for some time. that for a while there, they got rid of all their pass rushers last year. Remember, they shipped all those guys off, and all of a sudden Dan Quinn comes in, and he's like, okay. I think it's interesting to me, and I think Nick makes a really good point about this. The fact that they're playing Fowler like full-time, if he was here in Dallas and with the injuries that Dallas has on the edge, that might be your best pass rusher. Of course, Micah Parsons, but Fowler playing more snaps for them, and he doesn't look like he gets beat down, wore down, and all that. I mean, they actually rushing him off the right side. I mean, he'll flip sides, but they make Armstrong, and Armstrong has always kind of been a right side player. They've put Armstrong on the left side and let Fowler rush from the right side there, and he's explosive. He's quick. They run games, but I mentioned Frankie Louvu, and he came from the Carolina Panthers. Dallas played him last year. He's one of the better players we talked about at Carolina. So he signs as an unrestricted free agent. Quinn's using him, or Joe Witt, they're using him like they use Micah Parsons. He's a linebacker off ball. He stands up. They put him in the middle. He rushes a gap. Sometimes he'll go on the outside. He's not a hand down guy, but they kind of move him around. And when you start talking about him and Bobby Wagner, they got two linebackers that create pressure. They bring, and they've been blitzing a lot more. Their numbers, they weren't the first 5 weeks of the season. Their pressure numbers were not great. And then all of a sudden, Joe Witt started blitzing more. And they went from near the bottom of the league to the top of the league when it came to pressures off blitzes. And a lot of it has to do with the ability to get to, like say, Payne, Newton, those guys push the middle, Fowler, Armstrong off the edge, Frankie Louvu, he'll rush sometimes and be effective, and then Bobby Wagner will rush sometimes. If you look at this secondary, you talk about pass defense. I'll tell you what, I see why they made the Marshawn Lattimore trade, which they haven't played with him yet, because they've got a rookie in Mike Sanders still who's playing. But if you look at quarterback ratings against these guys, teams have had some success throwing the ball on these corners. And then Igbenogany,
there you go.
Yeah.
He's playing the nickel for him. And so, no.
Okay.
I mean, that's
in my evaluation.
But that's what I'm saying. Though there's possibility the pass rush is good, which helps their pass defense because they how Dan plays. We all have seen Dan play. It's twisting, it's rushing, it's putting two good rushers on one side and rushing. It's blitzing a linebacker through. But these corners. Here's another thing. I went back and watched every touchdown they had given up. They've given up 5 touchdowns to tight ends in the red zone. So you talk about safety play, Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin and those guys. They've struggled with teams that have. Now here's your guy. Unfortunately, he's Ferguson is banged up.
Luke Schoonmaker legacy game?
It could be. The Michigan Wolverine legacy game. Yeah. But to me, there's opportunities here, but this front makes it really, and you said it, you like the front, you're absolutely right about liking this front. But I do feel like that kind of with St. Juice and Sanders still and those guys, they've given up some stuff. There's been quarterbacks have had some pretty good ratings against them, but the pressure's been hard to deal with.
I think if I was going up against this secondary, the guy that I would be maybe not trying to avoid, but the guy that I think I would rely on him being in his spot when he needs to more often than not is Jeremy Chin.
Yeah.
I do like what Jeremy Chin not only brings in coverage, but he'll step up in the run game and lay a hat on you too.
Yeah.
He does a really good job covering the middle of the field from their strong safety position. I've liked this secondary at times, and then there's times where I'm like, this secondary is still reeling from being so bad last year.
Yeah, I think
they go after a guy like Emmanuel Forbes Jr. in the first round back in 2023, and he just hasn't panned out for them. I look at how they threw him on the field early last year, kind of to how Dallas has thrown Tyler Guyton onto the field early this year, in the sense of like maybe those guys weren't ready. And I think it kind of stunted Forbes' growth. I'm not going to speak on Guyton's just yet. I think he's still got a ways to go, but I think it stunted Forbes' growth in some instances, and he's just not physical enough at the end of the day. And now you see a guy like St. Juiced who comes in and is kind of overtaken him in the depth chart. And you look at some of these other young guys that they're trying to put around them, Tyler Owens, Mike Sanders still, and then that's why they go get get Lattimore, like you said. Lattimore did not practice yesterday.
He missed last week,
right?
Yeah,
still doing a hamstring.
And so this is a game where if Brandon Cooks can come back, he's going to be used.
Yeah,
Let me tell you.
I agree.
Because he's a guy that can not only get open across the middle of the field and maybe account for a guy like Jeremy Chin as a veteran presence he is, but he could also get downfield. Now, can Cooper Rush get the ball to him? It's a different question. But I think having Brandon Cooks in a game like this would certainly benefit this team.
Can I ask you a draft question real quick?
Sure.
Not for this draft.
Here
but
we go.
No, but
So did you see?
but Forbes.
Yeah.
Do we now have to think about slightly built corners that play in this league after what you saw with Forbes?
I mean, Nate Wiggins is also from Baltimore. He was a first-round pick out of Clemson, or second round pick, round, so somewhere in there out of Clemson. He's another guy I think that you look at. He was 165 pounds coming out. But yes, this is a physical league, and I think especially with the way defenses are playing up on receivers now and having success doing so, is throwing physicality on these receiving cores. And if you don't have a guy that can throw a hat around, then you better be step for step mirroring those routes every single time. And that's the tough thing to do. There's only about 3 corners I can think of that can actually do that.
That's one of those interesting things. I was having this conversation this weekend with someone about Travis Hunter, and they were like, where do you play him? And I was like, I don't know. And the point that they made was he's really slight. And how does that affect
185, right?
Yeah. How does that affect whether he should be a cornerback or whether he should be a receiver? And maybe to your point, Brian, maybe that is what makes teams say put him at receiver versus put him at corner.
Receiver.
I'm playing him at both.
You're doing both.
I'm not playing him at both the entirety of a game. But I'm going to play him here when we need him, and I'm going to play him here when we need him there. Like you use both of those abilities. But that's a draft.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, that's a draft. Conversation. Sorry, Ambar. Sorry.
By the way, you seen the East Carolina quarterback?
Here we go. All right, let's talk about.
He's good. I mean, for hurt his knee, but man, it's a good player. Okay, go ahead.
We talked about the challenge. The challenge, obviously, their defensive front and trying to stop their pass rush. Here's the opportunity. Right now, they are 30th in the league in rush defense. They are averaging giving up 5 yards per rush attempt, 31st in the NFL in that area. They've allowed 100 yards plus rushing every game except for one this year. They've given up 150 plus in 5 games this year, and there have been 2 times they've given up 200 yards plus.
Yeah.
Where are they most vulnerable in the run?
Got a plan for that?
I say in the middle. It's young in the middle with guys like Jerzon Newton. You do have Deron Payne in the middle, but I think that's where you can find some success. This is, personnel aside, you see some mirroring between last year's Dan Quinn defense in Dallas and this year's defense, Dan Quinn defense in Washington. Now, again, personnel aside, because there are some similar personnel guys, but I think overall Dan Quinn's specialty is getting after the quarterback in pass rush and maximizing athleticism in pass rush. Well, when you're maximizing athleticism in pass rush, then you're not maximizing physicality and stopping the run. So I think you see the similarities there, and I think you attack it in the same sense. Now, does Dallas have the offensive personnel to over physical those guys? Then I don't necessarily believe so, especially if a guy like Zach Martin is not playing. I look at a guy like Bobby Wagner that might be that guy that you have to get through to find success in the run game overall. But there are some instances where you can find some success, not only in the middle, but if you can somehow get outside and not let these edges seal the edges. Then I think you can get outside and one-on-one with these corners. These corners aren't going to tackle every Dowdle.
They're not. They're not. So. And yeah, you look at it, he's absolutely right. To me, that if you block Bobby Wagner, there's your chance right there, because he's your leading tackler when it comes to run stops. I mean, he's got like 70 tackles, and then what's funny is it starts to be their safeties, because that's pretty telling right there, that all of a sudden it goes linebackers to safeties,
not defensive tackles.
Not defensive tackles. Yeah, it's so that shows you that they deal a lot with having to, to do in the running game.
They do a heavy box a lot.
I didn't. It's
not
funny.
From my
I didn't look at that part. I could look up here at the break, but I didn't look up. I didn't look up because I didn't think, because Dan had always played with the safety and stuff like that. So you all naturally think, but they don't play with the safety. He did it because he didn't have linebackers. But I'll look it up here at the break. What I thought was interesting is, just if you look at a metrics thing, this team gives up more rushing first downs than even the Cowboys. That tells you something.
Yep.
You know, when you look at, I mean, they gave up 93. They're one of the tops in the league when it comes to giving up first downs by rush. You know, and Dallas is right there with them, and we all understand how bad Dallas's run defense is, and how many times it feels like they're giving up first downs every time somebody hands them the ball. Mm-hmm. The Commanders are worse at it than the Cowboys are even.
Wow.
So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But can you run the ball? Can you block the front? Can you block Bobby Wagner? That's the big issue here.
Is this a game you would elevate Dalvin Cook?
You know, he's gotten, I mean, really over the last few weeks, it just seems like all of a sudden it's like everybody's thinking,
are you asking
can
me
you get him in?
Yeah.
And then they finally make him active and get him in. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, nah, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, if this is a defense that you think you can get around and you can find success in outside zone, then I'm activating Dalvin Cook.
You ask that every week.
Yeah,
you ask for outside zone every week.
That's 100% true. That's
you do.
100%.
You
but especially against a defense like this.
I
don't trust this secondary.
I stopped asking for outside zone Dalvin Cook.
Well, but let me ask you this: at this point, I think Rico Dowdle can do it if you don't necessarily need
this might
Cook.
Be a hell of
the
a
question
game.
is just can you go into a game and say we're going to commit to run the ball with Rico Dowdle? Because even in this last game, his numbers weren't great, but they didn't give him the ball much. Yeah. And maybe it got away from him. Who knows? I think maybe they got away from the run a little quick. But the fact of the matter is, like if you're going to go into a game, this seems like the kind of game you should be able to go into and say, we are going to be committed to running the ball, because the last thing we want is for that team to start figuring out that they're just going to come and rush our passer, because that ain't going to be a good outcome.
Derek, this would be a great game to Trey Lance to run the ball a bunch.
I'm with you on that too.
You know what I'm saying? It's a team that can't play run defense.
Yeah.
And you're going to go in here and you're probably going to throw the ball 50 times with Cooper Rush again. You know? Okay, then
God bless him.
That's what I'm saying. This is a game where, and I don't know.
If that's the case, then we need to have another Travis Hunter conversation next Monday.
I'm just saying, though, that to me is, this is what coaching is.
Yeah.
Go try and take advantage of something that's not working for the other team.
Right.
You know, every week he asks that, hey, well, run the ball here, run the ball here, They don't run the ball here. You know, how do you watch these games and we break it down and you see carry after carry after carry after carry? They're watching the same damn film. Mm-hmm. You know, how can you not sit there and say, man, they don't look very good there on the edge. They really look like they're trying to get up the field. They're getting kicked out a bunch here. Yeah. You know, it's like me watching down in the red zone. It seems like the tight end's catching touchdowns every time. But do you think they'll throw a ball to a tight end down the red? No. You know?
Yeah.
Let's take our final break. Let's come back. We got some questions lined up. We'll hit those when we come back. This is DallasCowboys.com radio.
If you can't be at the stadium, there's no better way to watch your Cowboys than on an LG OLED Evo TV. That's because everything you see is more lifelike. Every play, every hit. I mean, you might as well be on the sidelines. That's how clear it is. It's all thanks to LG's legendary technology. Perfect black, over 8.3 million self-lit pixels. No one comes close. LG OLED Evo is the best TV in the game for a reason. See for yourself at lg.com/OLED Evo.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
If you shout, "How about them Cowboys?" you have that undeniable passion that's the heart of Cowboys Nation. And if you like to drink Dr. Pepper, you love the unique blend of its 23 flavors. Together, your one-of-a-kind fandom paired with the one-of-a-kind taste of a delicious ice-cold Dr. Pepper is the game day lineup that can't be beat. Better yet, gather your Cowboys and Dr. Pepper fan friends to watch the next game and crack open a delicious ice-cold Dr. Pepper for everyone. The wins will be even tastier. It's a pepper thing.
And we're going to overtime.
Erica, how much have I spent on concessions? for questions about their money, Dallas Cowboys fans can turn to Erica, the virtual financial assistant in the Bank of America mobile banking app. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/Erica by your side. Bank of America, official bank of the Dallas Cowboys. Erica responses may vary. Digital tools featured require downloading the mobile banking app and may only be available on select mobile devices. Erica is a mobile feature only available in the English language. Your chat may be recorded and monitored for quality assurance. Message and data rates and additional terms may apply. Bank of America, N.A., member FDIC.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to the break.
AT&T connecting changes everything.
Welcome back. Final segment of the break, live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. Let's get some questions. Got a question here from Chris Johnson. He said, should they get Turpin even more snaps after what he did last week?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I look at only 2 slants run all year, why not do it more? I don't understand. So yes, the answer is yes for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe two throws to span forward and the other 9 to you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I try and find ways. I'm not just talking about getting the ball at or near the line of scrimmage. Work some combination routes with him. Try and free him. See if you can get some stuff with. If you could bring him on some cross and stuff, you can hit him on the move. That 4th down pass he had against Atlanta, they came back. They could have thrown it the game against the Falcons. They could have. Against the Eagles, they could have done it, and they didn't hit him. Guy finds a way to get open. I'd throw him the football if I could. He's one of the legitimate playmakers you got.
And he was just jogging. Like
That's
that wasn't even the fastest he was running.
Yeah.
So expect him to be a lot faster, and hopefully. But these things that we always ask for, it never happens, and that's what drives me crazy and like insane, because I feel like we watch something completely different than they watch, but then they're the experts. So then I'm like, wait, like why am I are we watching the same game? Are we watching the same plays? But again, I'm sure they have their reasonings, and there's reason why they choose to play the way they play. But like an example, going back to, I know we've always talked about Lipke for the longest time, and we've seen him a little bit here and there throughout the season, but it's never been like a commitment to use like your best players or these players that can be a lot more dynamic. And he's one of those guys that is very quick, he can make those cuts, and like just get him the ball. And not to switch back the conversation, but when in the last segment that you were talking about committing to the run, I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, we keep asking them to commit to the run, but then more often than not, the runs are unsuccessful. So it's like, why would you keep trying to run the ball when you're continuously being unsuccessful with it?
My thought would be, number one, I think you have to think about how are you running the ball? Are there some more creative ways that you can try to run the ball? Going to Brian's point about maybe using Trey Lance a little bit more, I think there are things you can do.
No, don't be logical, man.
I know, right? There are things you can do to change up what you're doing. It doesn't mean just keep doing the, power,
to the wall
power run right up behind the guard. Like if it's not working, it's
That's
not working.
That's what the Commanders do, and it works for them.
But I'm saying, like, find some other ways to do it. I've seen some lesser skilled teams run the ball effectively against Dallas, particularly. Go back to that Arizona game last year. Yeah. They ran the ball at will. They didn't do that to most teams in the league, but they found a creative way to do it against Dallas, taking advantage of some of the stuff that they knew Dallas wanted to do, and they gashed them. I think there are some ways you can figure it out to be able to really, if you're going to commit to the run, to really be able to effectively run the ball, and I just don't know that they've done that enough.
Well, we'll keep waiting on it.
We'll see if this is the weekend.
Like, you guys, tell me when you're in your press box seat. Tell me next week if they did what you want them to do.
Yeah, the numbers say this is a week where you should at least consider it.
Try
right?
it. Yes.
You should at least do something to try that. All right, let's move on to the next question. This question is from Bill Bornke. He says, no starting 2 rookies was risky, but any way to determine if poor offensive line play is due to coaching scheme, Coaching, scheme, or misevaluating talent, even with the 3 vets?
You going all 3?
I'm not going misevaluating just yet.
I think the thing about it is it really hurt them that their right tackle took a step back, and then the drastic fall of your right guard, coupled with the rookie center who's never played center.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest learning curve, and the kid's gotten better. Guyton's gotten better at left tackle.
Yeah,
he really has. It's, is it to the point where is it like watching Tyler Smith play out there his rookie year? No. But I think that just the right side of the offensive line, how quickly it fell off. I think there's some things with the coaching as well. I think the scheme, particularly Derek, we just talked about it in the previous question. I think there's things about the scheme that you have to question that probably aren't right, probably not conducive to how you're playing. So I hate to be a ride the fence guy. I do feel like it's all the above.
Yeah.
Just mark D on your Scantron for all the above.
For those out there who don't know what a Scantron is, we used to take tests on these things called Scantrons. Look it up.
Mark
Nate,
D.
do you know what that is?
Look, I'm not that old. Or young. I'm not that young.
Mark D for all the above.
Right.
Yeah, because that's where this thing really at. When we do the autopsy, seriously, when we do the autopsy, you get start in the brain and go all the way down to the toes, and you're going to figure it out. There's a lot of things. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of things that's happened to this football team this year.
I think I'm going to go with coaching and scheme. I'm not going to go with misevaluation just yet. I think there are a lot of individual problems happening on the offensive line. There was a word you said in there that said coupled. I think you could couple everything together, and it ends up being 4 very big problems that I think you have up front. We could start at left tackle. I'm under the impression that your left tackle is not the guy you wanted to start week 1, but you had to. I think the plan was to start Chuma Edoga at left tackle because you see whenever Chuma Edoga is starting to get worked back in, Mike McCarthy says, yes, that's going to throw healthy competition back into that role. He was starting at left tackle up until he got hurt in training camp, and everyone was kind of looking around like, all right, so when's Tyler Guyton going to run with the ones? I don't think he ever was going to. I think he was going to get snaps, absolutely, but I don't think they wanted to throw him out there with just 14 career starts and start at left tackle without playing the position in week 1 against Myles Garrett. I don't think that was the plan.
That's an interesting point.
Left guard, I think your left guard is accounting for a lot of things happening around him. I think he's playing well. I don't think he's playing as well as he was last year, but I think he had better pieces around him last year. Your center is a rookie who is still trying to figure things out. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he is. But he is having that rookie curve where, okay, hey, you can definitely, when you look up in 5 years and you look at all 5 years on a window, you could be like, okay, yeah, that was his rookie year. But I think he's going to have a good start to his career. Your right guard is coming down a little bit, and as we've talked about on this show, and your right tackle is not playing well at all. And unfortunately, I think that's a situation where you're going to have to look at it from a holistic approach in the offseason and figure out, is that the guy for the future? But when you pair all that together, I think you have a big problem. It doesn't matter what the coaching or the scheme is at that point. But I think when you do look at the scheme, this is a heavy zone scheme offensive line. And I think this type of offensive line needs to be gap schemed, because I think if you have young guys up front with a running game that is not necessarily producing at the level that you want it to, make it a little bit less complex. Make it a gap scheme offensive line, and it just hasn't been so far.
Explain gap scheme.
Yeah, gap scheme going after one guy on the defensive line. Shout out Jerry Madeline.
There we go.
Gap scheme.
That's what I was thinking of when you started talking about gap scheme.
Gap scheme is basically you're lining up on the other side of the line of scrimmage and you're going after one guy, whereas zone scheme, you're going after an area and you're trying to push guys that are out of that area. But that's where things can get complicated. Really good offensive linemen can do that well. I think they do that because you have a guy like Zach Martin, and they've just been used to doing that because you had a Tyron Smith, you had a Zach Martin, you had a Tyler Broaddus who was good at times and doing zone scheme stuff. But I think now whenever you have young offensive linemen and you're having to account for a lot of things happening around you, that zone scheme can get really complicated. And also you don't have a running back in your backfield who I think can identify those gaps a little bit quicker than guys you've had in the past. So, and
that's where I have a problem with this whole situation. It's like, what have you tried to do differently to see if it works, to see if it helps them be better? You haven't. And you keep just running the same things every time, basically, without being successful. And it's just like, try to help him differently. You rely on 2 younger players, on youth there, which is not ideal on an offensive line. But I think in their moments, they've done okay, like enough for what they are right now in their career. And then with Terrence Steele, the question is like, it always makes me wonder. I'm like, why? You've seen him be better. You've seen him be a solid guy. So what happened there exactly? Why are you regressing so much? You don't all of a sudden just lose power, lose muscle in that way, lose the ability to know where to place your arms and do the type of work and like get beat up every single time. So and he's, as far as I know, healthy. Like coming from last year, I remember him saying and they always say the same thing. Like, I feel the best I've ever felt.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah, I feel the best I've ever felt. But that leads me, just because I've seen him be better and play better, it leads me to think it's a coaching thing, it's a scheme thing, that is just not working out for them.
Yeah. All right, we appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll wrap this thing up, get you guys ready for Cowboys versus Commanders. Till then, for Nick Harris, Bryan Broaddus, and Amber Garcia, I am Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break, live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?